The Integrated Homicide Investigation Team is appealing for tips tonight.
This is an extremely unusual case. A possible motive is still a mystery.
She was a person that would help anybody.
Investigators say her injuries are suspicious.
Nicole Porciello, who also went by the name Hasselman.
34-year-old Nicole Porciello, friends say she has a 10-year-old son.
Porciello also had injuries suggesting foul play.
And again, this was not a random incident.
Now to a mysterious circumstances of a homicide in Burnaby.
We do not believe that Nicole was randomly attacked.
It's second-degree murder.
God will punish him, whatever he done to my beautiful daughter.
Hey everyone, it's James, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a case that reminds us why investigators often say their hardest cases aren't the ones with no evidence. They're the ones where nothing is what it first appears to be. Sometimes the most devastating truths hide behind the most ordinary facades. You know what they say about car accidents? Tragic, unexpected, devastating. Well, tonight's story starts with one, except nothing about this crash was what it seemed. The twisted metal wasn't the only thing hiding dark secrets that November night in Burnaby, Canada. And when investigators started pulling at the threads of this seemingly straightforward collision, they uncovered a web of lies, obsession, and violence that would leave an entire community demanding answers about how our justice system values a human life. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a relationship where the red flags started small? A little jealousy here, some controlling behavior there? Nicole Porciello knew that feeling all too well. At 34 years old, she was everything you'd want in an educator. Patient, compassionate, dedicated to helping troubled teens navigate the chaos of adolescence at Templeton Secondary School. Her colleagues didn't just respect her, they genuinely loved having her around. She had this way of reaching the unreachable kids, the ones everyone else had given up on. And she was raising a 10-year-old son on her own, trying to show him through her own actions what it meant to make the world a better place. Can you imagine the strength it takes? Balancing a demanding career and education while being a single parent? Nicole made it look effortless, though those close to her knew the reality was far more complex. November 16, 2018, started like any other Friday evening in Burnaby. The Barnet Highway was busy with people heading home from work, planning their weekends, thinking about dinner. At approximately 10 p.m., emergency dispatchers received a call about a serious collision in the 8000 block. A charcoal gray 2017 Kia Sorento had slammed into a lamppost with enough force to trap the driver inside. The first responders arrived to find a scene that was both familiar and urgent. The SUV's front end was completely destroyed, metal twisted around the lamppost like aluminum foil. Inside, a man was trapped unconscious, his fate uncertain. The man they pulled from the wreckage was Jan Popel, a real estate agent. The paramedics worked on him right there on the asphalt, checking vitals, stabilizing his neck, preparing him for transport. His injuries seemed consistent with the crash. Bruising, a mild concussion, nothing life-threatening. Lucky guy, you might think, walked away from what could have been a fatal accident. But while the firefighters were packing up their equipment, preparing to clear the scene, one of them noticed something that changed everything. There, in a ditch about 30 feet from the vehicle, lay a woman. Nicole Porciello was still breathing, but barely. How did she end up so far from the car? Why hadn't anyone noticed her sooner? The paramedics rushed to her, but even from a distance, they could tell something was terribly wrong. This wasn't just trauma from being ejected from a vehicle. They loaded her into the ambulance, racing against time, but Nicole would die from her injuries. And when the medical examiner got his first look at her body, the real horror of that night began to reveal itself. You see, Jan and Nicole had history, 7 years of it to be exact. 7 years. That's longer than many marriages last these days. They'd met when both were in their late 20s, and initially, it was everything Nicole had hoped for. Jan was charming, attentive, seemingly devoted to building a life together. They made plans, shared dreams, talked about the future like couples do when they believe they've found their person. But relationships rarely stay frozen in their honeymoon phase, do they? Over time, Jan's attention morphed into something else entirely. It started subtly. wanting to know where Nicole was at all times, who she was talking to, what she was doing when they weren't together. He'd frame it as concern, even love. "I just worry about you," he'd say. "I want to protect you." Protection. That's an interesting word, isn't it? Because what Jan called protection, most of us would recognize as isolation. He systematically worked to distance Nicole from her support system, her friends, her family, anyone who might notice the changes in their relationship or encourage her to leave. He monitored her phone, scrutinized her social media, questioned every interaction she had with other people. And when emotional manipulation wasn't enough, Jan wasn't above using physical intimidation. There was an incident where he shoved Nicole hard enough in the chest that she felt pain for weeks afterward. Now, I want you to think about that. Weeks of physical discomfort from a single push. That's not a slight bump or accidental contact. That's violence, plain and simple. Yet Nicole stayed. Why? It's easy to judge from the outside, to say we'd never tolerate that treatment, but Jan was a master at the cycle of abuse. After each incident, he'd apologize profusely, promise to change, swear he'd get help for his issues. He'd remind Nicole of the good times, the man she fell in love with, convince her that version of him was still in there somewhere, just temporarily lost. And Nicole, with her generous heart and belief in second chances, would forgive him. They broke up multiple times over those 7 years. Each time, Nicole would gather her courage, tell Jan it was over, try to reclaim her life, and each time he'd find a way back in. Another promise, another plea for just one more chance. The final breakup, the one Nicole was determined would stick, happened just 9 days before that November night. Nicole had started talking to someone new, taking the first tentative steps toward moving on with her life. For someone like Jan, someone who viewed Nicole as a possession rather than a person, this was intolerable. He parked his car outside her house, watching. He posted compromising photos of her online, a digital form of revenge that's become all too common in our age of social media and instant humiliation. On November 16th, 2018, Nicole's 10-year-old son was at hockey practice, working on his slap shot, laughing with his teammates, completely unaware that his mother was about to meet with the man who would end her life. Jan arrived in a rental car that evening. Not his own vehicle, but a rental. Why would someone need a different car to pick up their ex-girlfriend? The answer becomes horrifyingly clear when you realize this wasn't a spontaneous act of passion. Every detail of that night had been planned, from the rental car that couldn't be easily traced to the timing while her son was safely away at practice, to the 2 kitchen knives Jan had brought with him. Nicole gets into that car, and I can't help but wonder what was going through her mind. Did she think they were going to talk things out? Was she trying to establish boundaries for coexisting in the same city? Or did some part of her, that intuition we all have but sometimes ignore, scream at her not to get in that vehicle? What happened next is almost too horrific to comprehend. Jan didn't just snap. He didn't just lash out in a moment of rage. He had brought 2 kitchen knives with him. 2. Let that sink in. This man sat in his home, went to his kitchen drawer, selected not 1 but 2 knives, and brought them with him to pick up the mother of a 10-year-old child. 47 times. That's how many times Jan Popel stabbed Nicole as she sat trapped in that passenger seat. 47 separate acts of violence, each one a choice, each one an opportunity to stop that he didn't take. But here's where this story takes a turn into the truly depraved. After inflicting these catastrophic injuries, Jan didn't call 911. He didn't rush her to the hospital. No, Jan pulled out his cell phone and started recording video. Let me repeat that because it bears repeating. This man filmed his victim as she lay dying. In that video, which was later shown only in court and has never been made public, you can hear Nicole struggling to breathe, fighting for every single breath. And in what might be the most heartbreaking detail of this entire case, you can hear her tell Jan that she loves him. She's dying, her body is failing, and she's still trying to appeal to whatever humanity might be left in this monster. Maybe she thought it would save her life. Maybe she was trying to protect her son from losing his mother. Or maybe, in those final moments, she was just desperate to make the violence stop. Jan's response? He tells the camera that Nicole had disrespected him, that she had taken from him. This is a man justifying murder while his victim bleeds out beside him, documenting his own crime like it's some sort of twisted performance art. But the horror doesn't end there. Oh no, Jan was just getting started with his evening of evil. He drives home, with Nicole still alive in the car. He parks outside, leaves her there, and goes into his house. And what does he do while a woman fights for her life in his driveway? He sends emails, he pays bills, he goes online shopping for a new TV and dishwasher. I need you to understand the psychology at play here. This isn't dissociation, this isn't shock. This is a man so devoid of empathy, so consumed by his own narcissistic rage, that he can browse Best Buy's website while his victim slowly dies outside. He even took the time to send an email resigning from his job. He knew his life as he knew it was over, but he was more concerned about proper resignation etiquette than the human being dying in his car. For 2 hours, Nicole remained in that vehicle while Jan attended to his mundane tasks. Every minute that passed was a minute that could have saved her life if he had sought help. Every second was a choice to let her suffer. When Jan finally returned to the car, he found Nicole still clinging to life. The human will to survive is remarkable, isn't it? Despite everything he had done to her, despite the massive trauma her body had endured, Nicole was still fighting. And Jan's response to this incredible display of strength? He decided to stage a car accident. Think about the calculation required for that decision. This wasn't panic. This wasn't a desperate attempt to hide evidence. This was a man looking at his dying victim and thinking, how can I make this look like something else? He put his foot on the accelerator and drove that Kia Sorento directly into a lamppost at high speed. Nicole wasn't wearing a seatbelt, probably because she was too injured to put one on. Or maybe Jan prevented her from doing so. When the vehicle hit that post, she was ejected from the car, thrown 30 feet into a ditch. Jan, meanwhile, was trapped in the driver's seat, playing the victim of a tragic accident. When the first responders arrived, they saw exactly what Jan wanted them to see. A serious car crash with an injured driver trapped inside. They worked to free him, to save his life, completely unaware that the real victim was dying in a ditch just yards away. It was only by chance, only because one observant firefighter happened to look in the right direction at the right moment, that Nicole was found at all. She was still alive when they found her. After everything, the 47 stab wounds, the 2 hours of bleeding in a car, the violent crash, Nicole Porciello was still breathing when paramedics reached her. They rushed her to the hospital, but the damage was too severe. Initially, this looked like a tragic accident. Jan was in the hospital with his minor injuries, bruises and a mild concussion, probably already crafting his story about what happened. But investigators aren't easily fooled. Something about the scene didn't add up. When the medical examiner began the autopsy, the truth became undeniable. Those 47 stab wounds told a story that no amount of staging could hide. The 2 different knives used indicated planning, preparation. Every piece of evidence pointed to one conclusion. This was murder, calculated and cruel. Suddenly, Jan went from car crash victim to prime suspect in a homicide investigation. 13 days after Nicole's death, on November 29, 2018, he was arrested. Investigators had spent those days building their case, collecting evidence, interviewing witnesses, piecing together the timeline of that horrific night. They examined surveillance footage, phone records, text messages. Every digital footprint Jan left that night became another nail in his coffin. But for Nicole's family, the arrest brought no relief, only more questions. How could this happen? How could someone they knew, someone who had sat at their dinner tables and celebrated holidays with them, be capable of such evil? Nicole's father, Joe Porciello, and her brother Carmine now faced not only their grief, but also the prospect of a long legal battle for justice. The impact on Nicole's 10-year-old son is almost too painful to contemplate. This child lost his mother, his best friend, his anchor in the world, to an act of violence so senseless it defies explanation. How do you explain to a child that someone who claimed to love his mother could do something so monstrous? How do you help him process that level of trauma? The trial of Jan Popel began in 2020, nearly 2 years after Nicole's murder. 2 years her family had to wait. 2 years of sleepless nights. 2 years of that empty chair at the dinner table. And when the day finally came to face her killer in court, what they witnessed would haunt them forever. Before I tell you what happened in that courtroom, I need you to understand something about the Canadian justice system. There's first-degree murder. That's premeditated, planned, deliberate. Then there's second-degree murder, intentional killing without premeditation. The difference? About 10 to 15 years before you can even apply for parole. Jan was charged with second-degree murder, despite bringing 2 knives to that car, despite the rental vehicle, despite every sign pointing to premeditation. The Crown prosecutor warned everyone in the gallery, what you're about to see is graphic, disturbing. If you need to leave, leave now. Some people did. They made the right choice, because what came next was 1 minute of pure evil captured on video. Jan Popel's own recording of Nicole's final moments. Joe Porciello couldn't take it. This strong man who had raised a beautiful, compassionate daughter, who had already endured the unthinkable, had to leave the courtroom. Meanwhile, Jan sat in the prisoner's dock with his head down, unable or unwilling to watch his own handiwork. The judge had to call a recess. The emotion in that courtroom was so raw, so overwhelming. Jan Popel pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. His lawyer argued for the minimum, 10 years before parole eligibility. The prosecution wanted 15 years. The family wanted him charged with first-degree murder, which would mean 25 years minimum. Let's do the math here. Jan was not even 40 years old at the time of sentencing. With a 15-year minimum, he could be walking free in his early 50s. He could have decades of life ahead of him, decades that Nicole will never have, decades where her son will grow up without a mother, where her parents will grow old without their daughter, where her brother will have that empty chair at every family gathering. The judge described Popel's actions as callous, cruel, and self-absorbed, which feels like the understatement of the century, but then added that he had demonstrated remorse. Remorse? And this is what Popel's remorse sounded like. I've been waiting for this moment for a long time to tell you how sorry I am. Sorry. He's sorry. He stabbed a woman 47 times, filmed her dying, went shopping online while she bled out, staged a car crash to cover it up, and he's sorry. In April 2021, the verdict came down. Life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 15 years. In the eyes of Canadian justice, planning and executing the brutal murder of Nicole Porciello was worth 15 years. Not 25, not life without parole, but 15 years. Outside the courthouse, Nicole's family was blunt. Justice doesn't exist in this country. And you know what? Looking at this case, it's hard to argue with them. The Canadian justice system failed Nicole twice. First, when Jan Popel's previous violence against her resulted in no meaningful consequences. And second, when her murder was treated as a second-degree crime, despite overwhelming evidence of premeditation. But somehow, in the eyes of the law, this wasn't premeditated enough. This is the story of Nicole Porciello, not just how she died, but how she lived, how she was failed, and how her death exposed the cracks in a system that should have protected her. It's a story that should make us angry, that should make us demand better, that should make us refuse to accept that this is just the way things are. Because if we don't, if we accept that 15 years is enough for what Jan Popel did, then we're telling every Nicole out there that their lives are worth exactly that. 15 years of their killer's freedom. And that's not justice. That's not even close. Thanks for being here and for listening to Nicole's story. I'm James. Take care, everyone.